Am I the a-hole for telling my daughter to get over herself? I was blessed with 3 beautiful children, and unfortunately my eldest, Brooke, passed away when she was 5 years old. It rocked my world, and I know I haven't been the same since. I went through therapy and still attend to this day, but a part of me died too. I will never let my daughter be forgotten. I bring pictures of her to events such as holiday celebrations and birthdays. I talk about her all the time. Every year on my living children's birthdays, I think of her and how her once younger siblings are now older than her. My other daughter, Marnie, is getting married next month. I asked her if she was having a memorial table, and she said no. I asked her about creating a seat for her sister who passed, as she should be a part of the day. Marnie told me no, that for once she wants a day about her. She says she couldn't have one event that wasn't about Brooke. Even her graduation, I had put a picture of her on the seat. She said I needed to stop making my grief front stage. I told her she was being incredibly selfish, and until she goes through a loss like this, she'll never understand. Marnie asked me if her kids would have to live under the shadow of Brooke too, and I told her she should be ashamed to get over herself. My son says I'm being terrible and I need to reevaluate my life. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. You do realize that you've made your living children feel like they don't matter, right? You're the a-hole. I cannot imagine your loss, but you've hurt your 2 living children by never allowing them to move on. And in your fear of having Brooke forgotten, you have ensured that they resent her memory. I understand wanting to keep a loved one's memory alive, but there's a time, place, and prioritization for it. It's disrespectful to the living children too, for the lack of a better word, obsessed with someone who is no longer here. Opie's life revolves around the deceased daughter so much, so that it's sickeningly offensive for Opie to put the other children second place. I'm not gonna sugarcoat my words just cause Opie's grieving. I don't like Opie at all. She's not a good or even a decent mother to her children right now. Maybe in the future as well. The other children don't have the same bond to Brooke as Opie does. They should not be subjected to Opie's obsession. I'm sure the children feel the need to compete with their dead sister for a fraction of their mother's attention. They should miss her. Pain leads to happy memories. Why would they want to forget their sister? Even her graduation, I had put a picture of her on the seat. Is Marnie happy? No. She wants her grief out of her life. I want to quasi-hijack this understandably harsh comment to add, because I know people who started therapy because of behavioral patterns that harmed their loved ones, had a misfortune of finding a really crappy therapist, and got much, much worse. Holy smokes. Get a new therapist. I want to offer sympathetic and productive advice to Opie. And the most generous thing I can assume about her is that she spent several decades seeing a wildly incompetent therapist. He was completely disinterested in helping Opie have meaningful relationships with the living, or even understanding what such a thing might be. I'm going to be blunt, Opie, because apparently your own children telling you you're terrible is not enough to get through to you. Most bad parents only manage to sow discord between their living children. You've accomplished the rare feat of causing the living to resent the dead. If you do not believe in an afterlife, then it follows that none of what you are doing to remember Brooke is actually for Brooke. It's for you. Stop being selfish. If you do believe in an afterlife, then surely you understand that Brooke doesn't want a table at Marnie's wedding. She wants a place in Marnie's heart. That's not going to happen until you stop turning all of your kids' important life events into a decades-long memorial for Brooke. You're the a-hole. None of what you are doing to remember Brooke is actually for Brooke. It's for you. Over and over this. Can you imagine that you are at your graduation and your mother requests an empty chair to put your sister's photo who died over a decade or 2 ago? My 20-year-old brother ended himself and it consumed my dad. He didn't care about me or anyone else. All he cared about was my brother. It's pretty rough when your parents' favorite kid is their dead one. You're the a-hole. I say this with the most love I can muster, but you are the one who needs to get over yourself. Next story. Am I the a-hole for choosing my son over my stepdaughter? I, female 32, have been married to Mark, male 36, for 6 years. Mark had a child, Sarah, female 12, with Allie, ex-girlfriend, who is starting high school next year, meaning she needs a computer for school. We also have a child together, Alex, male 5. The issue arose last week when my husband asked me to contribute 1/3 of the cost for Sarah's computer, saying it could be a Christmas present for all of us. Sarah wants a MacBook, and they decided on the latest MacBook Pro, over $2,000 after AppleCare, accessories, etc., with my share totaling at least $700. I make significantly less than my husband, and before this year, we would stick to a budget and have the cost together. This year, the budget I scheduled was $200 per kid. I typically handle all Christmas shopping, but run everything past Mark. I told Mark that was double what we spent each Christmas, and I wasn't aware until now that I was expected to chip in the costs. I said if I'd had time to save, I might have, but on short notice, it wasn't possible, and suggested we look at cheaper options, which was quickly shot down. I told him that I could contribute $200 from my savings, but no more, so we still had to buy presents for Alex. This wasn't received well by Sarah, Allie, or Mark, and they said I was selfish for not helping out. And Sarah was devastated as she took this as me favoring Alex over her, and not liking/wanting her. The suggestion was that I don't spend much money on Alex, and give the money to Sarah instead. But I refused, since I didn't consider that fair to Alex, and didn't want him upset that he didn't get any/many presents for Christmas. This has had a severe impact in my relationship with Sarah and Allie, and Mark thinks I should do this to prove my love for Sarah. Sarah has 3 people contributing to presents while Alex only has 2. So Sarah typically gets more presents anyway, but we always keep things fair. Mark and Allie are the a-hole for getting Sarah involved in an issue of finances. She's 12 years old. She does not need a $2,000 piece of equipment. Let them get it for her and see what happens when she breaks it. The fact that he equates sticking to a budget with not caring as much about Sarah is a huge red flag as well. Not the a-hole. However, keep your eye on your husband and his ex playing their daughter against you. You won't be the a-hole if you play into their game at your son's expense. I would just like to point out that most high schools issue their own computers to students. My kid is in high school and they gave out iPads for the students at the beginning of the school year. So this isn't a need, it's a want, and an expensive want for a 12-year-old. Not the a-hole. Why does a 12-year-old need a MacBook Pro in the first place? I got through university with a laptop I got open box at Best Buy for $400. It sounds as though he tried reasonable compromises and suggestions, and it's pretty rude of them to have involved her in this conversation. Good luck untangling this mess, and I hope the adults can reach some kind of agreement without spoiling the joy of receiving gifts gracefully for your stepdaughter. To be fair, some high school programs, think anything related to design, code, video editing, etc., do require certain software that only runs on newer laptops, or require Mac instead of PC. This isn't as common in high school as in college, but does exist. I don't know any schools that require PC but advanced courses at my public high school. Both schools I went to for undergrad and my grad school required a Mac that could run a certain version of software on it. Dad could also be thinking a newish MacBook now. We'll ask her through undergrad if it's taken care of properly. Why she needs a brand new Pro is beyond me. Refurbed ones will last just as long and can be $300 plus cheaper. However, that's school. The kid has 2 parents to pay for school, and Opie isn't one of them. Opie's a bonus parent to this girl. She could include a nice case or keyboard protector or year of Microsoft Suite and Kids Christmas gift, but is by no means responsible for this very expensive education-related tool. Kids' bio parents are being selfish a-holes. So not the a-hole in my opinion too. Yes, Mark was adamant on new so she could use it all through high school, 6 years, which I do agree on. The school supplies all the software needed, so I assumed the computers they suggested were needed for the specific software they needed. Edit. After reading the comments, I've decided to stick to my decision. I will offer $200 but won't pay more than that, and suggested cheaper options once again. I definitely agree that Sarah doesn't need that expensive of a laptop, but will suggest a MacBook Air. Any further comments would be much appreciated. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not allowing my ex-mother-in-law to have a key to my house? So me and my ex have been separated for 2 years. We separated on good terms and we get on well despite our differences. We do have a 3-year-old daughter, and he works a lot, so he doesn't get to have our daughter often. For this reason, I gave him a spare key to my house so that he could pop in and see us whenever he wanted. I completely trusted him with his key. For context, I have never had a good relationship with my ex-mother-in-law. She's always hated me and accused me of ruining her son's life by getting pregnant so young. I was 18. She hates me so much that when I was pregnant with our daughter, she threatened to take me to court to gain full custody of my daughter. When I found this out, I was of course furious and did confront her. They were empty threats, as I honestly think she knew she'd be fighting a lost battle. She despises me, and honestly, I'm not her biggest fan either. I haven't much interacted with her since I left my ex, except from the fortnightly visits where I take my daughter to her house. Well, my ex has been coming over to the house as usual, but has not been using his key. At first I thought nothing of this, but it became more frequent, and so I said if you're not going to use your key, I'll have it back. He then informed me that his mom had asked for the key so that she had access to the house, and to see her granddaughter whenever she wanted. He told me he agreed. I lost my temper completely. After everything I'd gone through in the past, I had absolutely no idea why he thought it would be a good idea to give his deranged mother my key. I told him I wanted it back immediately, and that I no longer wanted him to have a key. He is furious at me, saying his mother is in pieces, as all she wants is to know that she can see her granddaughter whenever she so pleases. I told him that that was in no way realistic, and that if she wished to spend time with my daughter, she could message or call me and I'd bring her over with me there in attendance. This wasn't good enough, and now him and his family are not speaking to me. So am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Start documenting these things. Exact dates, exactly what they do and say. This sounds like a course leading to a restraining order on the mother-in-law. Be prepared for that date. Stand your ground firmly on this issue. If he wants to invite her over while caring for his daughter, that's his choice. Giving her access to your home is a gross violation of trust, and you are right to revoke that access. Personally, don't ask for the key back. Just change the locks. It will give you peace of mind that you are safe again. I had started documenting back when she threatened custody, but stopped when we separated. I definitely think I should go back to it and continue it. Thank you. Can't emphasize enough about changing the locks. I'd also look into getting cameras as well. Time with his mother at this point needs to be only during his time with her and never on your property. Considering you didn't mention anything about a custody agreement, I'm guessing you only have an informal one. Might be time to consult an attorney about formalizing a legal one. If Grandma's feeling you are withholding her granddaughter through having normal boundaries, she likely is already looking into getting one for her son. Not stay home. Change your locks. She's likely made copies. Don't give him a key to the new lock. Locksmiths have been called. Feel like a fool for ever giving him one in the first place now. Don't. You did it because you were trying to do co-parenting. He is the one who broke your trust and is at fault. Not stay home. Most grandparents cannot see their grandkids whenever they want. They have to contact the parents and make arrangements to meet up. Your ex-mother-in-law wants that key for some other reason, and I doubt it is a good one. Get your locks changed. Even if you get that key back, they might have made a copy of it. It is not at all that expensive, even if you get a locksmith to do it. Or you can rekey the locks yourself if you are good at DIY. And I'd look for signs that someone has been in your house while you were out. She clearly wasn't using the key while you were home, but that doesn't mean she didn't snoop around while you were out. Update. Locksmith has been called. Glad I'm not going insane. Thank you all. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for alienating my daughter against her mother and allowing her to live with me? Context. My ex-wife Stacy and I, 37 male, met at a party in college and hit it off. We dated for 3 years during college. During the relationship, I made it clear I didn't want kids. Right after we graduated, Stacy got pregnant. She said it was caused by birth control failure. This is important for later. I didn't want the kid and tried to convince her to terminate or give the baby up for adoption, but she wanted to raise the kid. I really wanted to leave but felt guilty, so I married her out of guilt. After our daughter Madison was born, I started getting depressed. I became an alcoholic. I tried really hard to be a good dad to her. I really tried my best. When she was 5, I realized how much I hated my life. I filed for divorce and left. I made sure to always pay child support. I still loved Madison, I just couldn't be a good parent to her at a time. I stayed in Chicago for a bit, but eventually moved to Canada for a job. Still, I felt like I had no purpose. I was still depressed, and I was still drinking. I was in a pretty dark place. I even lived in my car for 3 months. Then I met my current wife, Amanda, 33 female, and we started dating. She cared about me, and I started getting my life back on track. I left my toxic job, found a good apartment, started going to AA meetings, and started seeing a therapist. During this time, I contacted Stacy and asked to see Madison. I begged and showed her that I was sober, but she wouldn't let me. I tried several times, but Stacy wouldn't let me. I started a business 6 years ago, and it's done incredibly well in the last 3 years. It's pulled in $3 million in profit last year. Then Amanda and I got married. I was finally able to hire a good attorney, and after a complicated legal battle, I was given holidays and summers with Madison. Madison was a little difficult at first, but I have explained everything to her, and she was really understanding. Madison, 15 female, and I now have a really good relationship. I have tried to co-parent respectfully with Stacy, but she has been really difficult to communicate. She doesn't tell me certain matters, and she sends threatening voicemails, etc. I also know that Stacy told some pretty bad crap about me to Madison. Stacy told Madison I loved alcohol more than her, that I never sent them any money, despite the fact I never missed a payment. 2 days ago, Madison called me and told me that she and her mother had a fight, and her mother admitted that she stopped taking birth control intentionally to trap me. Madison said that this was the last straw with her mom, and that she wants to move in with me. Madison said her mom was always mad at her for mentioning me, and that she forced her to share the stuff I got her with her step-siblings, and she begged me to let her move in. I obviously agreed. Legally, since she's 15, she can choose who to live with. Now my ex, her husband, and her family have been blowing up my phone telling me that I alienated Madison against her. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Oh no, the consequences of my actions. I have to laugh at them accusing Opie of alienating her. Opie didn't need to do anything since mom did a good enough job of that herself. Not the a-hole. You've turned your life around and started making amends with your daughter, which is exactly what a good father is supposed to do. Your ex not only lied to you about taking birth control to trap you, but she's been lying to your daughter for 15 years about you. And now she's pissed off because your daughter can see what a horrible manipulative person her mother is. Mom is and has been committing parental alienation, which is a huge no-no and would be another reason the courts would give Opie custody over the mom anyway. Mom is a a-hole. She desperately wanted a child, and now that she has one, she is doing things to hurt her. Wow, how very sad for them all. Thank goodness Opie has turned his life around, gotten sober, and is being a good father so that girl can have one responsible, loving parent. Am I the a-hole for refusing to include my stepbrother in my social life, resulting in him having no friends? My mom cheated on my dad with my stepdad. I know it's wrong, but because of how their relationship started, I went into the situation having made up my mind I would hate them. However, I found out that I'm going to have a stepbrother, John, so I thought I would be nice to him since he didn't have anything to do with the divorce. They moved into my city last summer from a nearby town, so my stepbrother would be joining my school as the new kid. We're in 11th grade, so everyone already knows each other and the social circles have been established since like elementary school, and nobody's nice to new kids. We've had assemblies because new kids have a hard time making friends. Because of this, my mom asked me to introduce John to my friends, which I agreed to because I don't want him to be alone. Well, John is a complete piece of turd, and he has been a piece of turd since the day I met him. He makes at least one comment a day about my stepdad is better than my dad. It makes jokes about my mom cheating. I've told my mom and she could not care less. It is telling me I need to learn how to figure it out on my own. I want to be clear that he is the one that started it. And he started saying stuff like this within an hour of meeting me. Since he came in the summer, we were arguing for like 3 months before school. So on the first day, he was expecting that he would follow me around and meet my friends. And I told him to buzz off and figure it out himself. He looked like a deer in headlights because he didn't know anyone. Fast forward to now, almost done with the school year, and I was right. As expected, John has made almost no friends, and usually eats lunch alone. We have one class in common, and I don't acknowledge him, but he sits in the back and keeps to himself. I guess his dad realized recently that he had no friends, and he asked my mom to talk to me. And my mom asked me if I introduced him to my friends, and I told her that I didn't, because he's been bullying me for over a year for no reason. She got upset and saying John has no friends because of me. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole at all. He's what, 17? Surely he is capable of seeking out and making his own friends. Beyond the fact that you owe him nothing because it sounds like a total toolbox. Nah, my school is actually really mean. Kids don't talk to anyone that's not in their clique. Unless you've been in my district since you were a little kid, you're not going to make friends. You'll have classmates you're friendly with at best. We've had assemblies about this because parents of new kids have transferred them before because of stuff like this. I knew from the start that if I left him on his own, he would be alone. What an awful school. Not Stay Hall, but as someone who moved around a lot as a kid, that entire culture sounds so freaking toxic. I grew up in a small community and it is 100% this. Even in high school, a lot of the cliques were formed from when you went to elementary school. People did make some friends early in high school, but it was very cliquey and part of the reason was geography. The high school fit in from all the small towns around. So while you went to school with a variety of people, very few actually lived in your town. And if you moved to that town, you had a problem that not only had everyone known each other since kindergarten, a lot of their parents had known each other too. Not Stay Home. If his father was so concerned about his kid having a social life, he should have thought about that before raising him to be a bully. You are under no obligation to do anything. He isn't your family. He is just the son of the man who ruined your family. I feel a bit bad for John. Who knows what his life was like before they moved, and being yanked out of his school and made to move into another house. He probably needs therapy, but until he does some self-reflection, I think Opie should keep his space unless John shows real remorse, not just sad that he is lonely. Next story. Am I the a-hole for naming my daughter the same thing as her half-sister? Last summer, I, 33 female, started sleeping with this guy, 45 male. In December, I found out I was pregnant, and while I'm pro-choice, I decided to keep it. I was already feeling like we were at the beginning of the end relationship-wise. So I said, look, I'm pregnant. I've made this decision, but it's up to you if you want to be involved, and it's okay if you want to bail. I have the resources to do this alone. He said a baby wasn't something he wanted, and I said that's totally fine. I won't even put your name down on a birth certificate. We can treat this like a sperm donor situation. He agreed. After that, he predictably started pulling away and we broke up. 3 months post-breakup, when I was 6.5 months pregnant, this woman DMs me and says, "Hey, were you sleeping with my husband until recently?" It turns out that he had a wife and a 13-year-old daughter. His wife is in the process of getting a divorce from him and gathering evidence of what turned out to be a wild amount of infidelity. So she was relatively cordial and believed me when I said I had no clue. Even before we'd broken up, I told him that if it was a girl, I wanted to name her Samantha. Samantha isn't the actual name, but it's a similar long girly name with multiple nicknames. It was my sister's name before she passed away. And even before that, it was a name I loved for aesthetic reasons. We always talked about naming our daughters after one another before she passed. He expressed dislike, but I jokingly but not really said it wasn't really his decision. After everything came out in the open, I found out that the reason he was against the name was because his 13-year-old daughter was named Samantha. Now that everything is out in the open, he said, "So what are you going to name her?" And I said, "What do you mean? I already told you, Samantha." And he said, "You can't do that. That's my other daughter's name." I said that he lost naming privileges a long time ago. And if anyone asked, I was happy to make it clear that I'd been the one to pick the name. I also reminded him that I still wasn't obligating him to be involved in this in any way. And given how he'd lied, I frankly didn't want him to be. But if and when he chose to be involved, I was going to hold him to it and expect child support / visitation / etc. Which from his point of view is not ideal because he doesn't want the responsibility of care. And especially doesn't want the responsibility of child support and asset splitting. Rather, he wants to have his cake and eat it too. I take on all the responsibility. There's no paternity test, a blank father's name on the birth certificate, but he still gets to have opinions. Which frankly suits me as well because I don't want to be legally tied to him. But when I told my friend, she said that while he didn't deserve any courtesy, it was an unkind thing to do as 13-year-old. How do you think your daughter is going to feel when she finds she has an older half-sister with the same name? And she will find out. There are currently around 50 comments, and as far as I can tell, this is the only one that mentions how the OP's future daughter might feel in the future. Surely that should be one of the first considerations. It seems like that could be covered by, it was my late sister's name, who meant a lot to me, and I chose it before I knew about your sperm donor's other family. Right? Tell her early that she's named after her late aunt and her half-sister having the same name is a funny coincidence. Assuming the real name is equally as common as Samantha, she's going to know at least a few at school anyway. Everyone sucks here. You and the father to be exact. Him for the cheating, you for the naming. I know a lot of people are going to say, name your kid whatever you want. But is it really in her best interest? How do you think your daughter is going to feel like when she'll find out she has a sister with the same name? What about her sister? How do you think she's going to feel about having a little sister named like her? Especially as she probably won't get to spend that much time with her with the father they have. For me, it's horrible for both girls. If you name your child Samantha, then your child is never going to have a relationship with her older half-sibling. No one is going to be able to recover enough from finding out that your sister, who your dad had during an affair that caused him and your mom to be divorced, has the same name as you. This is how it will all look from the older Samantha's point of view, and she will not like younger Samantha ever because of it, if she has to share her name with her. So if you intend there to be a sibling relationship, you might want to consider making Samantha a middle name and looking at the meaning of Samantha and finding another name with the same meaning to become the first name. So there's no a-hole here. It's just about what you intend for your child now you know they have a sibling. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for skipping my mother's 5th wedding to go to a job interview at Asda? For the past few months, I, 26 female, have been unemployed and desperate for a job, and I finally got an opportunity for a job at Asda, a popular British supermarket. But the date overlapped with my 52-year-old mother's 5th wedding. Over the span of my life, my mother has been in over 50 relationships, only 5 lasting more than 2 months. As a child, this really distressed me as I had many random men coming into my house frequently, and my mom was pretty much neglecting me throughout this. My dad left when I was 4 after my mother cheated on him with 6 guys. I found this out a lot later, and I didn't have contact with him until I was 18. After all of my mother's relationships and 4 divorces, she finally insists she has found the right man and invited me to their wedding 2 weeks before my interview, and I realized they were the same date. I figured that going to the interview would benefit me more than the wedding and decided to go to the interview instead. I assumed my mother wouldn't mind as I had attended every wedding before that, but I was wrong. She was very angry at me, and my whole family have been calling to tell me how much of an a-hole I am for missing my mother's big day. I did get the job though, and now I am financially stable enough to afford rent for my 1-bedroom flat, and I do not regret a thing. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You'll catch the next one. Seriously, there's never been a more appropriate time to play that card. You got the job. Congrats. Tell mommy you'll catch her on wedding number 6. Thank you. I'm doing really well now, other than my family being mad. Not stay home. I have a rule. I attend only one of each of the major life event parties per person. You'll only see me at one of your weddings, 1 baby shower, 1 divorce party, 1 funeral. All others get an RSVP regrets response. Okay, maybe I'd go to a 2nd funeral because you don't see those every day. You'll be at the 2nd funeral like, y'all sure this time? While poking the body. I love all the snarky comments telling her you'll come to her 6th, but if you need an actually productive thing to tell her, apologize for the unavoidable conflict, just to keep the peace, and tell her you'd love to take her out to dinner / make them dinner to celebrate their 1st anniversary next year, either on the date or near it, if they want that date for something special just for them. But set a price limit if you go out. That could get rough. Not the a-hole for sure. Last story. Am I the a-hole for not letting my child's mother stay with me? Don't want to get too far into the relationship aspect, so I'll bullet point it. Started dating Kara at 16, married at 22. Me/Kara both 36. Daughter came when we were 23. When our daughter was 6, Kara came to me asking for an open relationship. She said she had gotten bored and wasn't sure I was her forever person. I told her that wouldn't be happening. She said she wanted a divorce then. We went through that whole process and we ended up splitting custody. I later learned that she had been talking to other guys before we ever had our talk. So, safe to say, I'm not a huge fan of her anymore. We have no contact outside of pickup times. I typically don't ask my daughter questions about my ex unless it's of vital importance. But I did notice about 5 months ago that Kara had changed pickup locations to an apartment complex. I asked my daughter what happened, as I knew Kara had remarried 4-ish years ago, and my daughter told me that the guy kicked her and her mom out after they divorced. I asked what happened, and my daughter told me that her mom found out she was infertile, and the dude divorced her on the spot. I wasn't too worried about the situation as my daughter appeared fine emotionally. Took her to therapy to make sure, and she wasn't complaining about the apartment. So last week, my ex showed up at my door asking if she could talk to me. She said she had no money after her apartment raised rent. She was struggling to provide for our daughter, and her ex took a lot of her money in the divorce. She was probably gonna get evicted at the end of the month. She asked if she could live with me for a few months till she could save up for a place. I told her absolutely not, and that I'd probably go back to the court and seek a custody alteration, because I'm not gonna have my daughter in an unstable environment. My ex told me that won't happen, and she'll fight that in court. I told her she didn't have the money for rent, let alone a lawyer, so maybe she shouldn't fight it and instead work on finding somewhere to live. So my daughter has learned about the situation. I was speaking on the phone to my parents about it, and I think she overheard me, and she's furious at me, saying that we have plenty of space. I have a 5-bedroom house with an in-law suite in the basement. It's a walkout and it has a full kitchen. So my daughter thinks it's cruel I won't let her mom stay in the basement for a few months when we hardly go down there. I told her that wouldn't be happening as her mother has made her own decisions. It is not my responsibility. Also, I didn't say this to my daughter. I've become an attractive option to divorced women. Pool definitely helps. Lol. So I don't want my ex-wife living here because it could look bad to some of the women I hang out with. Kara texted me and offered to pay for utilities and do chores if that would change my mind. My daughter really wants me to help, but I don't feel like it. And I frankly don't really want to help this woman. I like my house situation the way it is. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. But if you don't want to permanently damage your relationship with your daughter, I suggest going to a family therapist to work it out with her in a structured setting. She's 13, if I did the math correctly, and this is an impactful time in her life. If not handled properly, she could resent you for the rest of your life. Therapy isn't a magic wand you can wave to make the daughter feel okay about this. She's perfectly entitled to feel unhappy that her dad won't help her mom. That doesn't mean that Opie should move his ex in if he doesn't want to. Just that he can't wish away his daughter's feelings about that choice. This, 1,000 times this. Therapy has potential, but there are so many obstacles involved in getting proper therapy. Get therapy is usually what people say when they just don't want to deal with you anymore. Not that there aren't some genuinely concerned people out there, but they don't often know the obstacles involved. Not the a-hole for not letting your ex live with you. People saying you're the a-hole for this can't conceive of the problems with this. Don't let her move in. However, you're the a-hole for putting your daughter in the middle of this. Don't quiz her about your ex. She's now playing you because you established this possibility by pumping her for info. Agree. If he lets her move in, she'll never leave. The daughter will yell at him for kicking her mom out. Better to get full custody until the mom is able to get her own place and steady income. Not the a-hole, but think of helping ex out, for your daughter's sake. Not by letting her move in, but maybe a loan or a gift of money to help her get back on her feet. Once your daughter is 18, wash your hands of it. But consider it while your daughter is young. Bad idea to give ex the money, because she will see Opie as a future bank account whenever she is in a difficult situation of her own making. Opie does not owe his ex a thing. She cheated on him and wanted a divorce. She made her bed and now needs to sleep in it. And she needs to stop using the daughter as leverage to play Opie and guilt trip him to let her move in. Do not let her move in, Opie, for your own sanity and stability for your bank account. First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for hacking my mom's Instagram to see if she violated NDA? I'm a nanny for a high-profile family. I signed a very extensive and strict NDA. Anyone directly involved in my life, mom, dad, sis, and husband, also signed an NDA. The nanny family recommended this to talk about the job without getting into any legal trouble or putting them at risk. Recently ran into one of my parents' neighbors, Amber, at the park. Amber asked how the new job was going, then proceeded to ask specifics about how it must be working for a family where their parents are, insert their jobs here. A direct violation of the NDA and something I could be fired and sued for. My dad isn't the sharing type, like at all, so I figured it was probably my mom. I asked her about it in a casual, "Hey, how's Amber?" way. I said I ran into Amber at the park and that it was odd because she knew the details about my job without me telling her. My mom simply shrugged and said, "That's funny. Maybe she Googled? Or saw something on social media?" My dad and sister absolutely hate Amber. They essentially said hell would have to freeze over before they spoke to her willingly. My dad ended our convo where I asked him about it by saying, "The only thing I know about her is that her son just made a partner at a law firm in New York and is making bank. And that's only because mom saw it on Instagram and told me about it." Right then, I knew my mom lied to me, and it was her. She and Amber love to one-up each other with their children's success, and I also just landed a great new job. I asked my mom about it again, and she told me that I was being dramatic, making stuff up, and that she would never do that to me. My mom doesn't text people, only DMs on Instagram. I know her password, so logged in to check her messages. There was an extremely long DM to Amber, where she shared their professions, children's names, ages, private school, general locations of their homes, how they pay really well, etc. Everything that we are legally not allowed to say, she said. I called her immediately and said that I logged into her DMs and saw the message she sent Amber that was a violation. She started screaming at me about how she is supposed to be able to trust her daughter. She can't believe I hacked into her Instagram, that mothers should be allowed to brag about their children, and then she hung up. It has been a week without contact between the two of us. We used to speak every single day. I am starting to believe that maybe I'm the a-hole here for violating her trust like that. My husband says if anyone violated trust here, it is her, and that I gave her ample opportunity to tell the truth before I intervened and sought out the truth myself. He constantly reminds me that they could sue us into the ground and fire me for endangering my nanny family's well-being. Because truthfully, Amber could easily be a psycho fan or sell the information to someone who is. So, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Your mom crossed the line and could end up costing you your job. I would be livid. And it could put the kids at risk if they're high profile enough that the nanny's whole family had to sign NDAs, and info on them is private enough that it could be sold to the media. Not the a-hole. I would recommend a CYA and tell the family what your mom did and how you responded so that they know you didn't have anything to do with it. Honestly, if I were OP, I'd consider telling them what happened and how you have handled it, and also tell them to take her to court for breaking the NDA. Unless mom gets some consequences for what she did, she'll just keep doing it. That's the part that kills me. She should face consequences because she's a grown adult and should know better. She's also my mom, though, you know, hard to separate the two. Honestly, I doubt I'll lose my job because of my mom sharing the info. There's a stipulation about how I can share any information pertaining to my job, with the exception of work or health-related issues, with those who also signed an NDA, aka my mom, husband, dad, and sis. That way, I can have someone to vent to. Technically, my mom violated her NDA. I didn't violate mine. It's the violation of trust with a family that might get me fired because someone I love betrayed them. That's hard to cope with. If I get fired for that, then I'll understand. I love the family/kids and just want what's best for them. If that's not me because of this, then I'll accept it. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for not visiting my sister when she named her newborn after my deceased son? This has been going on for some time. My wife, female 29, and I, male 34, lost our son when he was only 6 weeks old. It was devastating because this was our first baby together. My wife had multiple miscarriages, and we prayed for this pregnancy to work and be healthy, but all of that ended when his soul left on May 2020. Though we didn't get to spend so much time with him, we miss him dearly. My wife says he had my nose, which she thought was cute. She talks about him in details like she still sees his face clearly. There are just so many emotions we're dealing with, but I try to keep myself busy with reading poems and talking to people with similar experiences. My family is in the picture. They visit all the time, but I've got no contact with my sister because she was disrespectful of me and my wife and showed no support in the middle of our struggle. She kept saying that something was wrong with my wife, made backhanded comments about how it was our fault and that we should get right with God and ask for forgiveness. She used the fact that my wife's first miscarriage was deserved since she was pregnant before we got married. Then, right after my son's death, while my sister was pregnant with her second child, she told us she'd name her baby after our son. This hurt my wife so much I told my sister no, as she clearly was just doing it out of spite. But she got my parents involved, saying she wanted to honor our son's memory and ended up going no contact after I was put under a lot of pressure from my parents. She gave birth to her baby this past week. My parents were visiting and told us that I should work things out with my sister, saying she meant well and that she named her son after ours to honor him. My wife started crying and went inside the bedroom. I was so mad. I told them my sister was just trying to do this out of spite, but they told me that I was being bitter and ungrateful and saw nothing wrong with having a replacement grandbaby. My wife is upset since my sister used our son's name to honor him when she doesn't even respect us. She never said sorry nor tried to fix the situation and is now using my son's name to get back at me for cutting her out. The whole family are saying that I should visit her with my wife and act like we're a happy family. They've been telling me that I'm starting to look bad and that I should fix my relationship with my sister soon. My mom didn't stop insisting and is now talking to my wife who's feeling uncomfortable with this whole situation. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. I hate it when people do that. The whole lot of them deserve to get cut off and know exactly why they're getting cut off. Your parents are a-holes for not even trying to talk her out of this spitefulness. Replacement grandbaby? That's so messed up. Edit. The moment you say it's honor after being told no is just to be spiteful. No other way about it. Honor is when there is consent. The parents didn't consent to it. You make an excellent point. Still balking at replacement baby too. WTF. Not the a-hole. If she truly just wanted to honor your son, she would have respected your wishes not to name her kid after him. There are so many things a godly person can do to show respect for the deceased. She could have made a donation in his name to a charity that researches his cause of death. She could have added his name to a prayer list. She could have purchased a star and named it after him. Above all, she could have shown some decency and respect to you, his parents. Yes, my parents say that my nephew doesn't deserve to be treated like this, but it's my sister I have a problem with, and they can't expect this to go away with a simple visit. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for giving my son's girlfriend a list of requirements if they're going to receive financial support from me after I was given a list of requirements to see their baby? I'm 49 female and I have a son 21 male and his girlfriend 21 female. His girlfriend is pregnant, and because they're in a rough patch, both of them also dropped out of school. I've been helping them out with money. For the most part, I like his girlfriend well enough, but she's been a bit overbearing during this pregnancy. Not that I really blame her. Today, they came over, and his girlfriend decided to give a list of do's and don'ts to my husband and I if we wanted to have a contact with their child. The list was mostly reasonable. Have vaccines, don't swear around a baby, handle baby with care, don't show up unannounced, no sexism/racism and any sort of ism around a kid, etc. Some of them were a bit overbearing. When the baby is older, no tickling or sweets, nor cartoons, no baby talk, etc. I took issues with this for two reasons. 1. It seems insulting and condescending. Some of the items on the list are things we would never do, like the racism and sexism one. Struck me as really odd. We're also not anti-vaxxers. It feels like she was pretty much assuming the worst of us. Example, of course, we wouldn't swear like a sailor around a child. And we always call before we visit. They show up unannounced more than us. 2. Some of the items on the list are extreme. I understand that these are her rules and how she plans to raise the baby. But the idea that I would lose access to my grandchild because I bake cookies with them is extreme, and I don't want to walk on eggshells or go through the hurt of losing my grandchild. especially since I feel like it's the grandparents' job to spoil the child, within reason, of course. To clarify, I understand how these requirements could be necessary. If we weren't suited to be around children, I would understand. So, in response, I said fine. But now, here's a list of requirements to receive financial support. In the past, we've always trusted them and given them a monthly allowance. As long as we didn't think they were deceiving us or blowing money or asking for even more, we let them do what they will with the money. So, I added the stipulations like wanting to see their budget to ensure they didn't 1. Eat out, 2. Buy unnecessary clothing, 3. Didn't go to hair salons instead of barbers, 4. Had to spend a certain amount on the baby, 5. Didn't buy hobby-related stuff, etc. And finally, financial support would be lost if we were to be denied access to the baby. There were more stipulations, but I'm sure you get the point. I made this list and gave it to both of them in exchange for the list of the baby requirements. Both my son and his girlfriend were upset with this. I said that previously I had trusted them, but since you didn't trust us, we wouldn't trust them. I also told them how disrespectful I thought they were for giving me a list when they rely on my husband and I for support. His girlfriend said I wouldn't be able to see the baby. I told them they could leave. My husband and I are both conflicted over this, and I'm wondering if I overreacted. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Wow, not the a-hole. And frankly, I love your reply. The fact that they started with, if you want any contact, you will do the following, is this wonderful thing called blackmail. You know who it's a bad idea to blackmail? The people already financially supporting you. Play stupid games. Not the a-hole. OP, you are doing it right. The couple are just choosing beggars. Info. Is it possible that girlfriend's parents are much less trustworthy than you? So a list was drawn up that applies to both the sets of grandparents to be fair. My son's girlfriend has very little contact with her parents from what I can tell, so I don't think this was a general list for both of us, but I suppose it's possible. Edit. To all of you who are sending me messages hoping I die and saying you're happy I'll never see my grandchild, or calling my daughter-in-law a sleut for having an accidental pregnancy, why don't you say those things in the comments instead of hiding in my inbox? Edit 2. I thought I would add a mini update. It looks like the very top reply is NTA, but there is a great deal of ESH and YTAs. I can acknowledge that a discussion would have been a better approach. However, at the time I felt like I had just been slapped in the face, which is why I reacted the way I did. I have had some time to reflect, but right now, I am still more upset that in response to conflict, my daughter-in-law and son both reacted by saying I will never see their child. I can possibly forgive them for the list as being overly cautious parents, but I'm not going to tolerate them threatening no contact over any conflict or using it as a control method. It would be too hurtful for myself. Some of you have accused my list as being petty, which maybe it was, but truly I was being defensive more than anything. I will not leave myself open to emotional manipulation, and I plan on making that very clear to my daughter-in-law. I do plan on talking to my son and daughter-in-law and going from there. I'm just going to wait though, as I want to be in a clear frame of mind, and right now, I am still very hurt and angry at them. Hopefully in a day or two, we will be in a position where we can all apologize to each other and move on. Thank you for the advice.